Hello televiewers and possible listeners of For You Media Africa. This is Talking Points. The Bank of the Central African States, BAC, on December 15 ejected new banknotes type 2020 into circulation within the CEMAC region, which over 5 days. The new range includes notes of 500 francs CFA, 2,000 francs CFA, 5,000 francs CFA, and of course 10,000 francs CFA. According to the official information, the central bank seeks through this approach to be one step ahead of counterfeiters with more secure notes that are difficult to forge, explained Emmanuel Asafo Show, the first BAC Deputy National Director in Cameroon. This was during a press conference that held on the eve in Yaoundé. Bank cashiers and public accountants have been trained in the authentication of the 2020 range banknotes. Speaking last month in Jamina, the Chadian capital, on the sidelines of the BAC's 50th anniversary, the BAC Governor Chadian Abbas Mahamatoli presented this new range of banknotes as being more compact, more modern, more secured, equipped with numerous security features, 9 to 11 in total depending on the note, sometimes invisible to the naked eyes. These new banknotes have the particularity of being recognizable by visually impaired, which was a worry by most persons in the Central African region thanks to the tactile lines. A lot of people, especially the local man, unaware of these specificities, are asking a lot of questions, and we shall be finding answers in today's edition of Talking Points. Stay with us. Hello ladies and gentlemen, thank you immensely for joining us on your Pan-African channel For You Media Africa. Of course, it is a new edition of Talking Points, a revamped edition of A Voice. Of course, today we are discussing the CEMAC region, where since December 15, 2022, the BAC Bank, of course, injected some new banknotes into the economy, and of course, several persons have been asking questions with regards to what are these banknotes and how, if they are durable. Several questions regarding these recent banknotes that were ejected into the economy, and today we shall be finding answers just to ask, how is the CEMAC region trying to receive, are they being receptive to these new banknotes that were ejected into the economy on December 15? That is what we shall be finding out today with our guest. And of course, just to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that my guest this afternoon is Dr. Asang Michael Kuma, who is joining us all the way from Rwanda. He is equally a Cameroon observer. Good day to you, sir.
Good day, Madam Jigs, and good day to all our viewers.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you on our platform today. And just to say that you're equally a member of the East African Law Society. In order to get down to a discussion, having had the beefed up introduction we've had so far, we have discussed this before, this new banknote stuff on this platform, Talking Points, and this is the second time we're bringing this to the table. How do you feel about these new banknotes that were ejected into the CEMAC region?
Well, my feeling about the new banknotes, it's cool. You know, we all like new things, and when we have something new, it's always we're always excited, and realize many changes, improvements on the quality of the banknotes, making it more difficult for counterfeiting, and making it also very easy for the users to be able to recognize it, and moreover for general usage, even by those who are having impairments, cognitive impairments. So the feeling is good, and I think that the new banknotes also help to resolve other issues, such as issues of counterfeiting and also of sponsoring wars. So for me, it's a good move, and I feel happy about it.
Okay, now you've brought up a point that is going to stop the issue of sponsoring wars. Could you please elaborate on that point? Because at this time, Central Africa and West Africa, some parts of West Africa, actually plunged into what we call crisis, war, and so on. So, how could you elaborate on that particular point? Thank you.
So, as a matter of fact, those who usually orchestrate wars usually receive aid, and they usually stock up money, maybe money that they have gotten from sponsors, and also the money they have gotten from those who are victims of wars, like for example the thefts that go on, the ransoms which are being taken to liberate certain people who have been kidnapped by these Lord wars, and also the rebels. So, as a matter of fact, bringing in new notes will actually mean that the old stock will have to be taken back to the central bank, so that the new ones should be given in. And of course, you know that those who actually orchestrate wars will find it difficult to go to the banks and actually exchange these new notes, because some of them might be on the target list. So actually, the goal or the aim of bringing in these new notes, as with regards to war, is that automatically those who are in possession of old notes and who are actually promoting war will not be able to carry out these activities any longer, because they will be in one way or the other blocked from using the old notes to be able to sponsor any war activity. So it is worth mentioning that the Economic and Monetary Community of Central Africa has as goal to promote peace, security, and stability in the Central African region, and doing this through economic union and monetary union. And that is it has as final goal to promote development, so to promote economic growth of the region. So we will realize that one of the issues that actually hinder development in Africa, and especially in the Central African region, which is being known to have so many wars, because in Cameroon we have the Anglophone crisis, in Chad we have had a little bit of political instability, in Central African Republic we still have instability, and you know these are one of the key countries in the Central African region. So automatically wars are actually a hindering block to development. And taking this economic move to actually bring in new notes will actually permit in one way or the other, or will be a very good strategy to be able to hinder and to stop the promotion of wars in the region.
That's a very brilliant one there. Actually, now the BEAC chairperson or governor actually said that these banknotes could easily be used by those who are visually impaired. Now, this was some of the worries that some Africans, especially those in the Central African region, were actually facing, because probably they had been used to the old banknotes, as we earlier said, but now we have new banknotes in the economy, and getting to use them, getting to know them, will actually be something else, because they'll have to study. They will have to study. So don't you think this is a very good thing for them? But how do they come about them studying it before they can be able to use it?
Yeah, Madam Jigs, it is worth noting that all constitutions and even international conventions actually protect the rights of those who are handicapped, and being visually impaired is some sort of handicap, and it is being imposed on all our states or member states of the UN to be able to secure the rights of those who are handicapped. So that's why you see in our constitution it is being enshrined that the state has to take care of those who are handicapped and those who are that will need help, or who are the less privileged in the society. So automatically this is a very good move by the CEMAC, and we can clearly see that they are actually putting into practice one of these basic human rights, which is to assist those who are handicapped. So it's a very good move, and I think that in Cameroon we have so many institutions that take care of the blind and that teach them. It is very true that, of course, not every blind person actually has the necessary capacity or knowledge to be able to denote maybe the amount of money on a note, but it becomes a little bit difficult when we have to deal more with those who are aged. That is, those who are actually been who have diseases like hypertension or diabetes that can cause visual impairment or any other disease that is capable of causing visual impairment like glaucoma. So it becomes difficult for them because they have been seeing normally, and at a certain age, due to certain diseases, non-communicable diseases, automatically they lost their sight. But nevertheless, it's worth mentioning that these people on the other side probably have children who can assist them or who can aid them, because with their age also it will be quite difficult for them to be moving up and down. But for them, I think that a mechanism will have to be put in place to give them basic knowledge to assist them. But I think for the younger generation with eye impairments, there are so many schools, and I think the government has been doing quite well in actually making sure that those with visual impairments are really being assisted in Cameroon.
In mind, you are a medical doctor, and then so you have a little bit of you have insight on this. As a visually impaired person, what procedure does it take to teach them so that they can be able to better manage these notes?
Well, Madam Jix, it's worth mentioning that the role of the medical doctor is to diagnose if there is an issue, and normally actually refer the different patients or the individual to a center which is being specialized in carrying out or assisting them. So most of the time, ophthalmologists or general practitioners, when they realize that there is an issue, they will actually refer them to the eye specialist, and who has the adequate capacity to be able to teach them or to refer them to the necessary centers that actually help them to use other senses like the feel, like the touch, to be able to know what letters or numbers are being inscribed on a particular banknote. So I can't really tell you exactly what they do, because that is not my domain, but I believe that they are those who are specialized in doing this, social workers who actually know how to educate those with impaired visions to be able to write and also to be able to read.
In order to proceed, let's move away from that and look at economy, trade to be particular. Now we have new banknotes in our economy, and we have trade, especially those who do this trade with those from the interior. They buy and come and sell in the cities, the urban areas. Say here in Cameroon, we have traders who work with those that are the outskirts, in the interior and villages, areas, remote areas where those in the cities barely go to, and they get. Imagine with these new banknotes, don't you think trade will be somehow difficult, because those in the interior might yet or might still be yet to have received the information on these new banknotes that are already circulating in the economy?
Yeah, definitely. It will hinder, it will slow down
trade,
economic activities. Yes, trade, and that's because normally before implementing a particular strategy or a project, you have to carry out certain project activities, and one of the aim of these activities is actually to prepare those who are going to make use of the particular project or benefit from the project to be aware of what are their obligations, what their responsibilities, and what they have to know. So normally, before even putting into circulation a particular banknote, the different authorities which are involved in actually producing and making sure that these banknotes are being distributed, or are being placed into the society are supposed to make sure that there is some sort of capacity building and development which is being granted to the population. So when we talk about capacity building, it's simply about educating the population on the different skills and the necessary knowledge they need to know in order to be able to make use of a particular right or of a particular product which is being put in the society. And we know that banknotes are actually very essential because they are what we use as exchange for the different economic activities in the society. And we know that the economic sector is one of the major sectors of development. And we cannot talk about development, we cannot talk about growth without a stable economy. So automatically, if these banknotes are not being recognized by the population, of course, it's going to slow down certain things because there will be some sort of reluctancy by the different users to be able to accept the money as an exchange. And we know that one of the qualities of a good banknote or money is acceptability. So these banknotes must be accepted by the population. So if they are not accepted, then it then poses a problem, and it means that it is not a good note. But nevertheless, I strongly believe that it's never too late, and I think with time it's going to be corrected as people get to know more and more and get informed. It's very true that we have a serious problem with communication and information in our different societies, and sensitizations are not really being carried out enough. And we don't only have it in the economic sector, but we also have it in the health sector. And that is why we realize that there are certain things we cannot really carry out properly for the development of our country because of lack of information. So somewhere in the Bible it is being said that my people perish because of lack of knowledge or because they are ignorant. So that is the situation where we find ourselves now, and we think that everybody has to play a role. We also have to bear in mind that the government cannot do everything. It's true that they have the main responsibility to actually put in place different strategies to sensitize the population. But we also have to know that it's not only the government. We have to assist the government. So the civil society has to assist the government. The private sector has to assist the government. The population has to assist the government. And most especially, all our different TV stations, due to the fact that they have realized that this is an issue on the field and that there is not really some sort of acceptance by the population due to the fact that they are not aware that if there is a new banknote in circulation, they have to use their powers and their skills to be able to educate the population so that at the end of the day, these particular banknotes which have been put into circulation will be able to be used by all for the economic development of our nation.
Exactly, that is just the aim. All these measures that all these banks are putting in place is for the betterment of their respective societies and the betterment to some extent of the African continent. Now we move away, and you evoked the issue of the acceptance or one of the qualities of good money. Now I'd like to ask you, in your opinion, what are some of those qualities for someone who is watching us or listening to us on radio? And they might be asking themselves, what are the qualities of good money? Could you answer that for us, Doc?
Okay, we have several qualities of good money. As I earlier stated, we have, first of all, acceptability.
Yes.
So it should be an exchange or a tender which should be accepted by everybody, and that everybody should recognize as an instrument to be able to purchase goods and exchange goods and services, and also invest. Moreover, we have portability. So portability simply has to do with the money being easy to carry from one place to the other. So what is really good with our Central African bank notes is that we have the 10,000 francs notes. So automatically it will make it easier for someone to carry 1 million or 2 million, unlike in other countries where you just have maybe the highest note at 5,000, and it becomes really cumbersome for somebody to transport money from one place to the other. So we also have another quality, durability. So when we talk about durability, it's about looking at the component or the texture in which the money has been produced. It should be one which is resistant, which can last for long, which can last for even years and years, and which can be put in certain conditions and it will not still be destroyed. Like for example, in water, for example, in moist areas or in very dry areas. It should be able to be easily malleable and should not be able to get turned by any pressure or external stress. So that is another quality. We also have divisibility. So divisibility is the fact that the banknote should be able to be divided in one way or the other. For example, we have several banknotes like the banknotes 500, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, and 10,000. So it permits easy divisibility of the money. And we also have homogeneity. So it means that the texture of the banknote should be similar with the other one. So it should not be something different. So it will facilitate people to be able to recognize it. So another quality which is very important is that it should not be able to be counterfeited. So it should be designed and structured in such a way that for someone to be able to counterfeit it will be very, very difficult. And lastly, mechanisms have to be put in place for punishment of those who maybe traffic the banknotes or who counterfeit them. And this has to be made mention on the banknote itself, that counterfeiting it or violating any of its texture or reproducing it should actually lead to some sort of repression by the legislation and the law. And if we look at the new banknote, we'll realize that it is actually fulfilling all of these criteria, and that is what is really, really good. As we earlier on stated, the banknote is difficult for someone to counterfeit it, and there are so many signs on it that permits the users to be able to know that it's good money, and it also warns every user who counterfeits it that there will be sanctions that will come from the law upon them.
Okay, so now you've brought in back this issue of law. As a legal expert, could you bring in case there is an issue of counterfeiting, is there any legal part that actually shows that this is what they shall face, and what is it?
Okay, so according to the Cameroon Penal Code of 2016, there are legal dispositions that actually provide for counterfeiting of documents and also counterfeiting for banknotes, and they are being considered as misdemeanors. And I can't really remember the penal sanction, but I strongly believe that it's supposed to go between 1 year and 5 years. So there is actually repression from the penal code for all those who violate the principle or who violate or counterfeit money as a tender. So that's how the law actually protects counterfeiting, or protects the money tender, protects the tender in itself. Yeah.
Okay. Now we are looking at an African continent which is striving for its liberation. We've seen countries like Ghana with the cedis. We have Nigeria that has the naira. Now, given that most Africans, especially those in Cameroon, had been vying for the franc CFA to be ousted. Now, given that this new banknotes are still franc CFA, could this be a right choice for the economy of the CEMAC region?
Well, I would not really say it's the right choice. It might not be the perfect choice, but it comes with its own benefits, in the sense that as long as the legal tender or the banknote can be used by the different Central African states, automatically it will prosper economic growth. So the economic growth will be prospered in what sense? It will be prospered in the sense that there will be some sort of monetary collaboration. So it therefore means I can live from Cameroon and use the same money in Gabon and use it in Chad, and automatically it's going to facilitate trade. So as long as the nations are able to trade easily without going from one country and having to change the notes and the rest, that will actually prosper economic activities, economic collaboration, partnership, and automatically it will lead to the welfare of the Central African region as a whole. But that is what is good about it. But on the other part, we have to know that economic autonomy is vital in the development of a nation. There is no prosperous nation today without economic autonomy. So when we look at the big states, America, we look at France, we look at China, we look at Russia, all those superpowers, you realize that they have economic autonomy, and economic autonomy is being demonstrated first of all by that nation having its own currency, which it actually regulates on its own. That currency does not actually depend or expect on another currency. So we all know that our franc CFA is in one way or the other being backed up by the euro or the francs. So automatically we feel that we have some sort of economic stability because the last time we heard of a devaluation of the CFA is about 30-40 years ago. So it feels like we are having some sort of stability. But on the other hand, we cannot really have that economic development and growth which we desire, because there are so many things which are not being controlled by ourselves. We have other people controlling them. So we'll keep constant. Everything will look like it's normal. We'll hear other countries having devaluations, Ghana, Nigeria, and we think that we are doing better than them. But that's an error, because those countries will obviously pick back up, because when you go through economic crisis, automatically it makes you stronger in the sense that you have to think and look for better strategies to rebuild your economy. And I strongly believe that they are smart enough, the Nigerians and the Ghanaians are smart enough to be able to rebuild their company, their currency and their economy. And we realized that a few days ago, even though there was a serious devaluation of the Ghanaian cedis, we realized that today it is picking back up. And I think those are the examples we have to follow. We don't have to be scared of being always under the economic sovereignty of our colonial masters, but we have to claim our economic independence, which is being enshrined in the UN Charter of 1945. So that's what I can say about that. I think even though things seem stable and that the new banknotes being used in the Central African regions will help prosper economic growth, but the economic growth will not be as much as it would have been if we ourselves could come up with our own currency, which will determine value and work very hard to be able to make it gain more value in the market.
Okay. Kwame Nkrumah, once a Pan-Africanist and forever Pan-Africanist, once said, when you walk alone or when you wish to go far, you should walk alone, but when you wish to go fast, rather, you should walk alone, but when you wish to go far, you should walk together. Now, this is, it's often said in Africa that unity is strength. But when you look at it, a region on its own having a same currency which is not backed probably by the colonial masters, and another region, because Africa we have the north, the south, the east and the west. Had it been each region had their own currency, what would that speak for the African continent? It's true that a unified currency for the entire continent would be great, but had it been one region with say one currency, how will you feel really about that?
Well, it all depends on how we look at it. As a matter of fact, the ideal will be to imitate the European Union. The European Union, they have the euros which they are using, and we are seeing how strong they are, how united they are, because they have so many things in
yeah,
common.
exactly.
They have
When you go abroad, you have the euros, you have the dollars, but when you come to Africa, you have hundreds of currencies, and at the end, you're like, is this really Africa? Because each country has its own currency.
Exactly, and that is the issue we are facing. So we lack unity. We are not united. We don't collaborate. We don't partner with each other. So we see each other as enemies. We have or lower standards, or you see. So there are so many hindrances in our different African communities, and that actually limits unity and actually also diminishes in one way or the other growth, or doesn't help us to grow. And that is what we have been struggling to fight, Africans. And there is a new generation that is thinking in a different way. And the African Union, which is project of 2063, Vision 2063, they are trying to work harder to bring all African states together so that they can actually foster cooperation and collaboration at the economic sector, education, health, infrastructure, technology, so that it will lead to the growth of Africa. There is some sort of really lack of political will, because in 2016, the African Union actually launched the African passport, and it had as deadline 2020. But unfortunately, we are in 2022. And we don't yet have an African passport. So we realize that there is a real lack of political will to be able to work together and implement certain things. And that's why, as Africans, we need to change our mindset. We need to change our mentalities. And we must understand that if we don't come together, then we shall not certainly go far. We shall stay where we are, and others will keep on taking advantages on, or will keep on taking advantages of our leaders and of our population, because most of the time we have to find ourselves taking loans, and at the end of the day, when we are not able to meet up with these loans, we are forced to sell our natural resources at extremely cheap prices. So Africans really need to stand up, and we need to look at things in a different way. We need to cooperate. We need to see ourselves as brothers. We need to see ourselves as one. And the examples are everywhere. We see other states, other countries being united, and we see how prosperous they are today, setting targets not only for specific countries, but setting targets for everybody. And that is going to encourage every African nation to stand up and to work hard, because so many African nations today, they are in some sort of their comfort zone, because as I earlier on said, we have our currencies being backed up by other foreign currencies. So so many people are sitting in their comfort zones. They don't want to reason. They don't want to work hard to be able to transform their economies so that it should be emerging, it should be productive, and we should always have a surplus that will lead to our development. But unfortunately, that's not the case, because everybody is doing the same thing and we don't want to work hard. So it really calls for us to change our mindsets, to work together and to set standards, very, very high standards, because I can assure you, Africa is so backward. We are so backward nearly in everything: technology, health, education, economy. We are so backward, and we need to stand up, because if we don't do that, then things will only get worse for us, because there is always a moment to take an action, and the more we waste time, the more things are going to aggravate, and we might not be able to catch up any longer. So I think now is the time. And I think the movement should be more of advocacy towards different African leaders, towards the African civil society, towards all Africans, so that they should think with one mindset, work together for the development of Africa.
The time is now indeed for different African stakeholders to take the stand and of course defend this continent, which means so much to them. Of course, you said that we have economic disunity amongst the African continent, but then we have the economic communities that are playing their different roles at their respective levels and regions. How do they come in to ensure that we have smooth economies across the continent?
Yeah, exactly. There are so many economic zones in Africa. We have CEMAC, we have CEDEAO, we have the East African Community, and all these economic zones have as role to foster economic growth. But as I earlier on said, we have the main problem we have in Africa is lack of political will. So you see, they'll always sit down, discuss things to do, organize big seminars in big hotels, luxurious hotels, and at the end of the day, they will take decisions which will never be implemented or executed. You realize that the banknotes we are using today were actually designed since 2020. So normally they were supposed to be in circulation since 2020. But you imagine that it's today in 2022 that we have it. And if there were not probably other serious reasons such as wars and maybe issues of counterfeiting, risks of inflation and exchange rate, you see that they might have not even launched it. So these are the type of things we are talking about. We are not only talking about words or instruments that are being put on paper, but we are talking about their implementation. We are talking about their active execution and in the society. And that's where the problem falls, because for these economic zones, they don't lack. They are always there. But you always realize that there is some sort of political reluctancy or lack of political will to implement them. And that is where the issue comes up of effectiveness, efficacy in the different strategies that we put in place. So they are struggling to play their roles, and I think in one way or the other they are doing their best, but that is not enough, because if we really want to develop Africa, then the goals which we have set, we must respect them and we must promote them and we must implement them. That is the only way we are going to succeed. And automatically, if we are not able to actually implement the different strategies that have been put in place by the different economic zones in the different regions in Africa, if we are not able to do that, how come we will be able to do that at a continental level? So I think there are so many things we have to resolve. I think that advocacy, a lot of advocacy must be done to promote good leadership, to promote political will, and actually to put in place institutions and mechanisms that will assure the different parties which are being involved for implementations to implement them according to the time that has been set by the different economic zones. And that if any party to the economic zone or any country to the economic zone or member does not implement the set policies or strategies, then there should be very serious sanctions on that nation. So that is the only way that we'll be able to foster our different economic zones, and from there we'll be able to unite as a continent to foster economic growth in Africa.
Fostering economic growth and development has always been the goal. We're gradually coming to the end of today's edition of Talking Points over your Pan-African channel for UMedia Africa, where today we're discussing this issue of new banknotes into the CEMAC economy. We've had them since December 15, 2022, and our expert this afternoon, we're trying to see how we can answer questions with relations, so to say, to this new banknote. And of course, I was asking you, the question I'd like to ask is, you brought the issue of leaders. Leaders have a very important role to play, especially when it comes to implementing the decisions which they take at various levels that impact their respective countries, their respective societies, and their respective economies, because it turns down and affects the population which they are put to govern. And now we have the African Union in Africa, and the African Union is, I think, above the economic communities of various economic blocks that surpass the different regions. Now, how can the African Union come in and defend or stand in when it comes to educating leaders on the way forward?
Well, that's a very good question, because the main role of the African Union is to foster peace, security, and economic development in Africa, and actually to work with all its member states so that all the different international conventions that has been put in place by the UN, those about human rights, economic and social rights, women's rights, children's rights, environmental, humanitarian, all those different conventions should be implemented in Africa, and also set their own goals according to the context in which they find themselves, because it's worth mentioning that the problems of Africans are not obviously the problems of Europeans or the problems of the US. And that is why the African Union has to make sure that all these conventions are being implemented smoothly into the African context. But now there is an issue, because though the African Union has this mandate and this role to play, now the powers of the African Union are a little bit limited. It's true that we have the African Human Rights Court of Justice, which actually serves as an institution to be able to condemn states that have violated human rights. But then we have issues coming up with states that don't meet up with certain economic criteria or conditions, or meet up with certain conditions regarding peace. You see, it becomes very difficult for the African Union to sanction them, because we are not actually a country. So their powers are a little bit limited in the sense that they play more of an advisory role, they play more of advocacy, guide and counseling, and they don't really have that power, that constraining power, that compulsory power to be able to take actions which will be imposed on different African states who violate certain things. So of course it becomes very, very difficult. And that's why sometimes even the UN has been rendered a toothless bulldog, because you realize that the UN, even though it's an organization that actually recruits all states in the world to actually promote peace and security and development, automatically there are other states that stand against the UN and say, we are not going to follow what you're saying. And it's the same thing happening with the African Union. And that's the reason why, if we really want a very strong African Union, then a strong union, let's call it that way, a strong union in Africa, then automatically we have to think of another way to come together and to give a particular institution more powers to be able to carry out or stop certain violations of economic, social, and human rights. So that's why many have thought of Africa being a state on its own, like the US. So having to bring all Africans, united countries of Africa together, so that a particular body will be given powers, be given sovereign powers to be able to conduct certain activities and use means of force, or maybe other powers that will be conferred to the institution to be able to carry out certain actions in Africa to promote development. So it becomes very difficult, because we shall see that there are maybe conflicts in different African states because laws or the constitutions have been violated, and yet the African Union cannot do anything. The African Union can only advise. We also have situations where international conventions have been violated by the different leaderships of African states, like the Goma Agreement in the DRC, and we see that the African Union cannot really do anything about it. So at the end of the day, those are the limitations of the African Union, and if they want to really carry out every project that they have, then it means that they have to go more through advocacy. They have to go through advocacy, capacity building to educate the population and make sure that they promote democracy, and that they educate the population so well that they be able to appoint or to vote leaders that will actually use a comprehensive approach in resolving African issues. Because as of now, most of our leaders are dictators. Most of our population don't even know the reasons why they go and vote. People are being paid to go and vote. People are given bread and sardine and they go and vote. You see, people vote because it's their brother, it's their friend. You see, they don't vote objectively. They don't look at what this person or this individual will bring new to the society, will bring new to the country, how he's going to develop the country, what are his plans, and how he's going to carry out them. But they look more at other things, tribalism, favoritism, and all the like. And at the end of the day, we have leaders with no capacity and with no competence. And at the end of the day, they are easily manipulated to do things according to their ways and according to the interests of foreign powers or even foreign institutions or companies. And that's where we find ourselves. That's why we really need to change our mindset, and the African Union will have to change its strategy, and the strategy will be through advocacy, going down there, meeting the people, and actually educating them.
Going down there, meeting the people and educating them is what I'll take to ask my last question for today. Given the new banknotes are already in our economy, what can leaders do so that they can better educate those that are on ground? They can better create awareness with the population.
Okay, first of all, the first and easiest way to carry that out, first of all, to make use of the media. So the media is a very, very powerful tool,
yes,
and some would liken it to the food power. So it's important that the government makes use of the media to be able to communicate. We have a lot of TV stations in Cameroon, and even our national channel, the CRTV. We can make use of these platforms to be able to communicate and educate the population on the new banknotes in circulation. What are the advantages? What are the benefits? What are the qualities of these new banknotes? So secondly, I think that they can also pass through telecommunications. So they can pass through the different telecommunication companies we have in Cameroon, MTN, Orange, Nextel, to be able to send messages or to even be able to call individuals. We have situations where MTN and Orange had called customers to know how the services are and all the like. So they can carry out the same thing, call every client or every user to actually know from the client if they are aware that there's a new banknote, and what are the qualities, and are they using it. So all those simple questions, and from there they can educate the person that, okay, there's a banknote, this is what he needs to know about the banknotes and the rest. So thirdly, the government will have to work with the different decentralized institutions. So we have the councils. The councils have workers, and they can make use of those workers of chiefs to also communicate to their different indigenes or population that there is a new banknote that is in circulation, and everything that they really need to know. I think that by using these three means, they will be able to educate the population sufficiently so that they will be able to be aware of it, and that these new banknotes will be acceptable to everybody, and that it will be used to prosper our economic development.
Okay, sir. So just quickly, could you send out a message to leaders, especially those in Africa?
Well, my advice to every African leader is that we have to be united. We have to collaborate more among each other. We need to have a very good and positive political will to be able to carry out the different plans and strategies which are being set at the continental level by the African Union, by the regional levels, and also by our different domestic or national levels. So it's very important for us to work together, and that is only if we work together that we'll be able to foster economic growth in Africa. We need a change of mentality, and we are in the 21st century. Things are no more the same, and that the promotion of capacity building for our different populations, advocacy, is vital for our growth.
Thank you immensely, Dr. Michael Assong, for taking out time out of your busy schedule to join us on today's edition of Talking Points.
Thank you, Madam Jason, and thank you to all our viewers.
Ladies and gentlemen, Our guest for today, he is a Cameroonian observer and a member of the East African Law Society in Rwanda. Ladies and gentlemen, it's on that note, you might have heard, you might have learned a lot from today's discussion. But then we are coming to the end of today's edition of Talking Points over your Pan-African channel for you Media Africa. I have been Jakes Nabuse for presentation. More programs are coming up. Stay tuned.